Good evening, everybody. Hope everybody's doing well. It's kind of balmy here, late evening on Wednesday in East Point. It feels like storms are kind of starting to move in. I thought I'd sit out here and try to do this in my garden. I wanted to go back years ago to a story, and I want to tell a story about an event that happened at Southeast Christian Church, where I was the pastor. We had this family that joined the church, a man and his wife, and their three children, one little boy and two little girls. And they joined the church, and they came to the church for about a year, and they was regular, and they dressed, they dressed well. The man, I remember the man always wore a suit. Even the little boy that was like 5 years old, he always had a little sports coat and a tie on to come to church. And I noticed that there was something about the children that was off-putting to me, and I wondered if maybe they were all three of them on the spectrum of some sort. They seemed different. They seemed a little odd. So there was something in my spirit that just started befriending the little boy. But I noticed like he would come up and just right off the bat, he would come up, and I don't know whether it was because he saw me as somebody who had the microphone or an authority figure, or I don't know what it was, but he seemed to really feel connected to me. And yet, when he would come and stand beside me, and I'd go to reach down to like touch him on his head, I could tell he would just tighten up and flinch. And I'm like, I thought, that's odd. Because in my heart and in my spirit, I wanted to hug him. But he was kind of untouchable. You could feel that boundary about him. Little by little, as the months went by, I would always make sure when they come in, I'm like, hey, little man, hey, little buddy, hey, little fella, how you doing? And there was a couple of times, because I never had a service. Maybe I had one or two, but I never had a service in those 15 or 17 years where at the end of a little prayer meeting or a group, I see anybody just want to be prayed for. People would always come forth, and we'd have a little prayer, touch people, lay it on hands, that kind of thing. Well, there was a couple of times over that year that they came that the little fellow come up, just not tell me what it was he'd be prayed for. He just wanted me to pray for him like I prayed for everybody else. And when children would come up, I would typically get down on my knees. I was a younger man then. I can't get on my knees hardly now, but back then I wanted to get eye level with them. I didn't want to tower over them, so I'd get down on the floor with them, and I'd just hold them most of the time. But with him, he had that boundary. So I just would touch him on his little shoulder, and I'd be, Lord, touch little man tonight, and watch over him, be near him, little prayer. So there come a time after they had been coming for about a year, and also the little fellow, the two girls, they were kind of untouchable. They was maybe 9 and 10 years old. The little boy was like 5 or 6. But although I would speak to them, they were just you just kind of know that I never could break through to either one of them. But the little boy, I started out by, on like we had Wednesday night service back then, midweek service. This was years ago, and I would typically play the bass guitar. That was what I'd do. But I'd tell the little guy, I'm like, come up here. You want to sit on stage with me tonight? And he'd be like, yeah. I'm like, come up here. You can sit on the pulpit with me. So I had this thing where I don't know what brought that over me. I'd get him to come and sit on, we had a little pew on the pulpit, and he'd sit there with me. And I mean, he'd sit there and behave himself. Boy, he just thought he was sitting up in the king's chair. And he'd sit beside me, and I'd ask him if he's doing okay and so forth. Well, anyway, for whatever reason, the dad came up to me one service, and he said, Brother Sellers said, I want to ask you a favor. And I said, okay. As young pastors, you'd do anything to keep people coming to church back then, you know. You know. But he said, I want to ask you a favor. He said, I've got 4 or 5 boxes that I just need to really store them here for a little bit, if it's okay. And then I just don't have room for them at my place. And we got to rent a bigger house. And I didn't really think much about it, but I told him, I said, well, yeah, you can do that. That's okay. Just put them in a Sunday school room back there. You know, they'll be all right. Well, anyhow, he had these 4 or 5 big boxes, you know, big boxes. And I didn't pay no attention to them until it was back to Sunday school class. And then somebody called me one afternoon and said, you need to come over here. Said, I got to snooping around in these boxes. You know, which I'm like, oh my God, stay up. Y'all do not need to be looking in people's boxes. So I go over there, and what it is, it's 4 or 5 boxes. I mean boxes of hundreds and hundreds of Polaroid photos of this man having sex with his 3 children, going back from the time they were 1 and 2 year old, and just hundreds of them. And as soon as they showed me 2 or 3, you know, it's kind of weird when you see a child being penetrated or just in that kind of way. Just seeing the images of it violates the very, it just violates the very humanity within you, you know. And it's kind of like I didn't want to go through them. I didn't want to do this. I saw 1 or 2. I'm like, oh my God! I called Atlanta police. I mean, who knows what to do? I just knew that this was pretty traumatizing to me. And here we are at church. I've got boxes of child pornography in the church, unbeknownst to me. It kind of reminds me, if I stop and slow down for a minute, it reminds me that although we are surrounded by good, evil is always present with us. We are surrounded by positivity and good energies. Bad energies and negativity are always present around us. As we get older, we learn, I think, more how to maneuver through that. So anyhow, the Atlanta police officer come out, and as soon as he saw it, he got the people on the phone from DFACS. They, you know, within an hour, there was 2 or 3 carloads of DFACS people come up. The police were there. They asked me, they said, since you're the pastor and the children know you, we want you to go with us to their house, and we're going to take those children out of that house right now, and he's going to be arrested. You know, that's how damning the pictures was. And the mother, they didn't arrest her, but she never got the children back. She wasn't an active participant, but you could see her in the shadows and in the backgrounds of those pictures of some of them, what was going on. She was well aware of what was being done to her children. Let me say this about women that keep silent and turn a blind eye and allow child abuse to go on in their homes. They will not be spared the raft of those children once they get older. If you listen to this now, if you have children that you know that man you with, maybe verbally, maybe physically, some maybe even sexually, are abusing that child or boy or girl, believe me, that child will hold you accountable for that because you knew. You knew. In some ways, you're more guilty than the man that actually did it. Enough of that. I'm just putting that out there. Beware. But anyhow, we get to the house. They arrest the guy. It's very traumatic when you go into a home with police and other people and you take 3 children, a 5-year-old, a 9-year-old, and a 10-year-old out of their home. If they arrest him, as the years went by, it took several years to get them. They was completely lost all rights to these children. I went to court off and on for years for all 3 of them because the DFACS social workers, they would call me and they're like, "Well, you just be in the courtroom," you know, when other people are trying to go through the process of adopting them all. The little boy that sat on the pulpit. The last time I saw him, he was maybe 7, maybe 8. And I was in the courtroom when they did the legal adoption, and then we went out into the parking lot down here on Capitol Avenue. It used to be some kind of court over there by the old Atlanta Stadium. And the lady that adopted him, I remember she was driving like an orange BMW, and she adopted him. Somebody else adopted 2 girls. They broke them up. But I tell this story, and I seen him in the parking lot. I hugged him goodbye, and I'm like, "Oh man, you're just gonna be in such a good place now." So anyhow, I share this story tonight. That a lot of people think the pastors out there that pastor on Sunday, that some of you pastors that might hear this, you know the deal. Man, when you get into quote unquote ministries to help people, you find yourself in all kind of situations of helping people. The easy part, the easy part of pastoring is being able to entertain people on the pulpit and talk about how Jesus was sleeping while a storm was going on, and they said, "Lord, we perish." That's kind of the easy part, enjoyable part even. All the other stuff really weighs on you. It's a lot to it. So anyway, my time's up. I wanted to share that. If you have this image in your head of a sanctuary of people that want to love and serve and worship and be good, decent people, and yet in a Sunday school room next door, 4 or 5 huge boxes of pictures, hundreds of pictures of child pornography. And I use this symbolically as, although life is good, there's goodness all around us. There's goodness within us. Evil is always present. Evil is a lot closer to us than we often realize. And although we walk toward the light, we are the light. We connect with other light. Darkness is always around us. Negative, bad energies are around us, surround us. Spiritually, we walk through this life. We walk through it. Yes. That's all I had to say this evening. Yes. Good night.